In the heart of a small, sleepy town stood a Dunkin Donuts, its neon sign flickering eerily in the night. This particular Dunkin Donuts had a dark history that lurked beneath its sugary facade, a history of strange occurrences and unexplained horrors. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the deserted streets, 5 unsuspecting individuals would soon find themselves trapped in a nightmare unlike any other. The first of the 5 to arrive was Sarah, a young college student with a penchant for late-night coffee runs. She had heard whispers of the Dunkin Donuts' haunted reputation, but dismissed them as mere superstition. As she stepped through the creaking door, the air grew thick with a sense of unease, and the familiar scent of fresh donuts turned rancid in her nostrils. Ignoring the ominous atmosphere, Sarah ordered her usual coffee and settled into a booth by the window. The minutes ticked by slowly, the only sounds in the empty shop the soft hum of the fluorescent lights and the distant whir of the espresso machine. Just as she began to let her guard down, a figure emerged from the shadows, its face shrouded in darkness. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as the figure drew closer, its movements unnatural and disjointed. With a sudden jolt, the stranger's face was illuminated by a flickering light, revealing hollow eyes and a grotesque smile that froze Sarah's blood. Before she could react, the figure vanished without a trace, leaving Sarah trembling in terror. She knew then that the stories were true, that something malevolent lurked within the walls of this accursed Dunkin Donuts. The second visitor to the Dunkin Donuts was Mark, a weary trucker seeking a quick caffeine fix before hitting the road. As he approached the counter, he noticed a peculiar stain on the worn linoleum floor, shaped like a twisted hand reaching out from the depths of hell. Shrugging off the chilling sight, Mark ordered a black coffee and took a seat at the counter, his eyes scanning the empty shop for any signs of life. Just as he was about to take a sip of his drink, a cold draft swept through the room, raising the hairs on the back of his neck. Out of the corner of his eye, Mark caught a glimpse of movement behind the counter, a shadowy figure with gnarled hands and eyes as black as coal. Panic seized him as the figure drew closer, its eyes boring into his soul with a malevolence that chilled him to the core. Unable to bear the gaze any longer, Mark turned to flee, only to find himself face to face with a mirror and the reflection of a twisted, contorted face that was not his own. The third patron of the Dunkin Donuts was Emily, a local librarian with a fascination for the macabre. She had heard the rumors surrounding the shop but dismissed them as the product of overactive imaginations. As she settled into a booth with a book in hand, she felt a sudden chill in the air that made her skin prickle with unease. Ignoring the feeling of foreboding that settled in her chest, Emily began to read, the words on the page blurring together as the shadows danced on the walls around her. A sense of dread crept over her, as if invisible eyes were watching her every move. Suddenly, a whisper echoed through the empty shop, a soft, insidious voice that sent a shiver down Emily's spine. She looked up to see a figure standing at the far end of the counter, its features obscured by a thick veil of shadow. As the figure drew closer, Emily's heart raced with fear, for in its eyes she saw the glint of malevolence, the promise of untold horrors lurking just beneath the surface. With a trembling hand, she reached for her phone, only to find it dead, its screen blank and lifeless, as if drained of all power by some unseen force. The fourth visitor to the Dunkin Donuts was Alex, a weary police officer on the night shift. He had been drawn to the shop by reports of strange occurrences, determined to uncover the truth behind the tales of horror that had plagued the town for years. As he entered the dimly lit interior, Alex felt a sense of unease settle in his chest, a feeling of being watched by unseen eyes that sent a chill down his spine. Brushing off the sensation, he ordered a cup of black coffee and settled into a booth near the door, his hand resting on the hilt of his service revolver. A sudden gust of wind rattled the windows, causing the lights to flicker and dim. Alex tensed, his senses on high alert as a shadowy figure materialized in front of him, its form shifting and twisting in the half-light. The figure spoke in a voice that chilled Alex to his core, a voice that spoke of ancient horrors and unspeakable acts. With a sinking feeling in his gut, Alex realized that he was in the presence of something not of this world, something that hungered for his very soul. The fifth and final visitor to the Dunkin Donuts was John, a disgraced paranormal investigator seeking redemption in the eyes of the public. Armed with an array of ghost-hunting equipment, he had come to the shop in search of evidence of the supernatural, determined to prove once and for all that the stories were nothing more than urban legend. As he set up his equipment in the center of the shop, John felt a chill settle in the air, a presence that prickled the hairs on the back of his neck. Undeterred, he began his investigation, sweeping the room with an EMF detector and a digital voice recorder. It was when he reviewed the recordings that he heard it, a whispering voice, barely audible but filled with malice and intent. John's blood ran cold as he realized the voice was speaking directly to him, taunting him with promises of unspeakable horrors. With a sinking feeling in his gut, John knew that he had stumbled upon something far more sinister than he had ever imagined, something that defied all logic and reason. As the night wore on, the five visitors found themselves drawn together by an unseen force, their paths converging in the center of the Dunkin Donuts. Shadows danced on the walls, whispers echoed through the empty shop, and a sense of impending doom hung heavy in the air. With a sudden shudder, the lights flickered and died, plunging the room into darkness. In the blackness, a figure emerged from the shadows, its form twisting and contorting in ways that defied the laws of nature. With a voice that echoed with the weight of centuries, it spoke to the gathered souls, promising them a fate worse than death. As the figure drew closer, its eyes gleaming with malevolent intent, the five visitors knew that they were facing a force beyond their comprehension, a darkness that hungered for their very souls. With a final, desperate cry, they banded together, their hearts filled with a courage born of desperation. As one, they confronted the figure, their voices raised in defiance against the encroaching darkness. And in that moment, the Dunkin Donuts was consumed by a blinding light, a light that banished the shadows and dispelled the darkness that had haunted the shop for so long. When the light faded, the five visitors found themselves standing in an empty, unblemished shop, the horrors of the night nothing more than a distant memory. As they left the Dunkin Donuts, each of them knew that they had faced something beyond comprehension, something that defied all logic and reason. And though the memories of that night would haunt them for the rest of their days, they took solace in the knowledge that they had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. But deep down, they knew that the Dunkin Donuts would always hold a piece of their souls, a reminder of the horrors that lurked just beneath the surface of the world as they knew it. And they prayed that no others would fall prey to the malevolent force that dwelled within those walls.